is more, like, engaging for an audience. It's more fun. Like, oh my god! Also, in real life, they would have never been in any real danger, because all commercial aircrafts carry a device called a TCAS, or Traffic Collision Avoidance System. In the event that two airlines are on a possible collision course, the transponders of each plane will have communicated with their counterparts, and each plane's TCAS will give the pilots the necessary climb or descend instructions to prevent a mid-air collision. And this happens when the planes get within 100 miles of each other. TCAS does not rely on any ground communication, so the power outage would not interfere with this. We then see Aunt May helping the wounded in the hospital. It's kind of random, but it's like, hey, Aunt May's doing her part. In the next scene, Harry arrives to see Spider-Man and Gwen, and oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, he looks really awful in every way. Like, he literally looks awful, and within the world of the movie, he looks like shit. But he does look very Goblin-esque, if you ask me. He finds out that Spider-Man is Peter because Gwen is there with him. I suppose his voice just wasn't enough to give it away earlier. Harry is spiteful and blames Peter for what happened to him, even though it makes no sense. He picks up Gwen and flies her away. Peter pursues him and saves Gwen after Harry drops her. Peter yells at Harry and he's like, drop her! And they do the whole poor choice of words thing, like the Joker did in The Dark Knight. So Peter and Gwen crash through the roof of this clock tower. The Green Goblin drops a bomb right next to them. It explodes, but it does nothing to either Spider-Man or Gwen. And at the same time, it completely destroys the steel grate that they were lying on. So Spider-Man and Green Goblin start fighting in this clock tower, as Gwen is suspended in midair holding onto a web. The web gets caught in a gear and breaks, which is so weird. Isn't Spider-Man's webbing supposed to be super strong, and a gear crushing it just snaps it in half? What? Apparently there was a different scene filmed where the Goblin cut the web that Gwen was holding onto, which leads to her death, which I would have liked a lot more. There's also alternate versions of this scene where the Goblin stabs Gwen. There's another one where he breaks her neck with his bare hands. So Gwen falls, and we get one of the most heartbreaking moments in comic book movie history. Peter shoots a web down to save her. We see it form a tiny web hand reaching out to save her. Some people mock this part, but I think it's a cool detail. In this scene, they easily could have made it some like dumb movie magic where she's just saved, you know, she lives. But instead they allowed Gwen to die. This is made even more impactful because earlier in the movie, when she forced her way into the fight with Electro, Peter imagined Gwen's disappointed father staring at him, knowing what could happen to her if he allowed her to stay. But Peter knew that there was no stopping Gwen when she gets an idea in her head. But if I were Peter, and I loved this girl, and she arrived out of nowhere when I was fighting this Electricity Man, I'm sorry, I would take her and swing away. I would save her. But he allows her to help, and it ends up working somehow. It's so dumb. Also, a very cool detail in this movie is that when Gwen Stacy dies, the clock tower's hand spins rapidly, landing on 121. And Gwen Stacy is killed in The Amazing Spider-Man number 121. Gwen's death also happens 121 minutes into the film. I gotta say, Andrew Garfield's acting when Gwen dies is so good, okay? It really is. It's amazing. He's even said that he can't rewatch this scene because it's too real for him. Mark Webb was originally going to change the ending and let Gwen live, which I think would have been really stupid. But he had to give credit to Stan Lee and directly followed Gwen's death scene. Between the Green Goblin and Spider-Man was filmed in an actual clock tower where temperatures would reach 115 degrees. Dane DeHaan had to wear prosthetics and makeup requiring 3.5 hours of application, as well as his Goblin costume, which weighed 50 pounds and couldn't be opened without power tools. After DeHaan lost 7 pounds in a single day, the film's medic was so concerned that DeHaan would get heat stroke that crew members were told to pour buckets of ice on DeHaan's head and down his suit between takes. Unfortunately, this didn't work because his body temperature was so high that the ice would melt and turn into steam before he could feel the cooling effects. Eventually, a tubing system that would pump cold water was installed in the Goblin suit so that the cooler temperatures could reach DeHaan's body. The things that people go through to make movies, man, it's crazy. We're then brought to Gwen's funeral. The next time we see Harry, he's locked up in prison. I guess he doesn't need the suit to survive anymore. It just healed him, and he's good now. Dane DeHaan's acting in this movie is so weird. In one scene, he'll be serviceable, and in the next scene, he'll be the most painfully awful shit you'll ever see. So Harry hires a man to find people to defeat Spider-Man by providing them Oscorp equipment. This man walks into a room and walks past Doc Ock's arms, Vulture's wings, and finally the Rhino suit. It doesn't doesn't make much sense that they would have this tech down here, right? Did Doc Ock decide to use Osborn's secret lair to store his octopus arms? So Alexei volunteers to take the Rhino suit and fight Spider-Man. In the next scene, Peter is still grieving the loss of Gwen. Aunt May offers words of advice to help him move on. And then we see Rhino reach the Rhino suit has guns on it. It's like this big metal suit. He's firing on some policemen when a brave little boy in a Spider-Man costume walks out in front of Rhino. Alexei mocks him. Peter shows up and addresses the kid as Spider-Man. Okay. But I do think Peter should have prioritized saving the kid first and then doing this. Like, he's in front of this giant killing machine. What makes you think he won't shoot at you immediately when you arrive there? He should have swung down and saved the kid and then had his cute moment with him. Rhino turned these cops into Swiss cheese, but Peter takes the
Holy Jesus.
The effects they used to put Paul Giamatti in the suit aren't the best. It reminds me of when they put Mark Ruffalo in the Iron Man suit. It kind of sucks that the Rhino fight scene was cut short, because it seems like something a lot of people would have really liked to see, but I guess ending the movie with a bang was more important. Maybe they were thinking about putting the Rhino fight in the third movie. When this movie was in theaters, it had one of the weirdest post-credit scenes ever. Some feel bad because it's a random past. The reason being, director Mark Webb violated a contract with Fox to make a film for them after The Amazing Spider-Man. Thus, Sony had to agree to promote Fox's X-Men movie for free. The scene, which was not included in the video release, is unusual for a mid-credits teaser, in that it is actual footage from the film it's promoting. In the first battle scene with Electro, and the scene at the end with Rhino, there are steel police barricades set up to prevent the citizens from getting in harm's way. This is strange because there's no reason for those barricades to be there, as the villains showed up unexpectedly. Also, the civilians will be running for their lives if a massive Rhino tank was spraying bullets everywhere, and this floating thunder god was shooting lightning bolts down at them, but they just stand around like idiots. Overall, I'm pretty surprised to find that the second movie had more impactful emotional scenes than the first movie had. However, the negatives outweigh the positives by a lot in this movie. The score was abysmal, the acting ranged from great to terrible, there's no sign of J. Jonah Jameson again.
You serious?
It's a shame. The future of the Amazing Spider-Man franchise was widely reported to be incredibly confusing following this film's release. In the build-up of the film, and indeed the few months after its release, it was confirmed that it would be followed by The Amazing Spider-Man 3 and the Sinister Six spin-off film, with Venom as well as The Amazing Spider-Man 4 also confirmed to be in the works. However, shortly afterwards, Sony announced that the Sinister Six would take the place of The Amazing Spider-Man 3, and that the third in the trilogy would be pushed back to an unspecified date in 2018. Then, during an answer to Sony's email, it was revealed with much media coverage that Sony had approached Marvel Studios with a deal to share the rights of the franchise, of which Marvel refused. During this period of time, it was also revealed that Sony wished to fire Andrew Garfield due to his speaking out about the production studio and refusing to give him the company. After a lengthy silence, Sony and Marvel revealed on the 9th of February 2015 that they would work together to produce a new Spider-Man series set in the MCU. That leads us to today. With the Spider-Man film around the corner, it'll be very interesting to see where they go with the character. So yeah, guys, that is my very late review of these two movies. Let me know if you agreed or disagreed with anything that I said. I think my final thoughts are, I liked the first one more, but surprisingly, the second one I found more entertaining to watch. Even though it's worse, it's just a blast. You know, the movie is pretty awful in a lot of ways, but it's really fun. They did go a little overboard with the lovey-dovey scenes, I think, but then again, they needed to do that to make Gwen Stacy's death more impactful, so it makes sense.
Oh my God.
Let me know what you'd like me to review next in the comment section down below. Thank you so much to all my patrons that make videos like this possible, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.
we have a podcast. It's called The Weekly Planet, where we talk movies and comics and TV shows. And this is our review of Spider-Man No Way Home. This is mostly an audio format, you know, something to just put on in the background, if you can. The podcast normally goes up on Monday. It's on iTunes, Spotify, it's got its own YouTube channel, all of that, if you are keen. Also check out bigsandwich.co if you want early videos, bonus podcasts, movie commentaries, and a bunch of other stuff. Okay, leave a like if you could. I will now stop talking so that a version of me from the past can start talking. Alright then, do you know what it's time for, Mason?
Oh, what's it time
It's
for?
very much time to talk about Spider-Man No Way Home. Now, I just want
And it's time to crack open Spider-Man Knows Way Home.
Thank you, very good. Just to clarify, even though we mentioned this up top, we're going to do non-spoilers, then spoilers. The things we are going to spoil are the things in the trailers and like generalities.
Also
like,
in the non-spoiler section,
Yes.
we'll mention stuff that's in the
We'll
trailer.
do trailer
We'll
stuff.
not mention anyone who may or may not be in the movie that isn't
Yeah.
in the trailer.
That's right,
But
exactly.
if you're like, I haven't seen Spider-Man No Way Home yet, and I skipped all the trailers because
Yeah.
I didn't want to be
Oh
spoiled.
no!
I would say also, like, if you don't want to know anything, you shouldn't be. At
Oh
all. You should go
no!
somewhere else.
I would argue if you don't want to know anything, this is the perfect podcast. I'd rather not learn anything. Well, welcome.
Yeah, but like, I want to elaborate like a little bit in the non-spoilers on that, like the bridgeprivate.com, which is in the trailer. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
not to spoil it, but just to talk about it. You know what
Look,
I mean?
I've written here, my first note says, so little of this movie can be discussed in the non-spoiler section.
Yes, I'm trying my best to put some talking points out that we could go through, but before we get into that, we need to talk about Box Office, Mason.
Oh, the box office.
The box
Yeah.
office.
But you're talking about a Star Wars character.
Yeah, Han Solo's made Box
Box
Office. So this is the first non-COVID movie to make over $100 million in a US opening.
Okay.
They had a $200 million budget, by the way. Double that for marketing, roughly, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah,
And had
That
one.
seems low.
That's about the standard.
I guess, well, I guess you're right, it is the standard at this point, but I'm like, aren't there movies like, haven't we seen some stuff that's like 275? Like, that's standard, that's
Yeah, I
enough.
think it's probably closer to that.
Over here, here's me being like, $200 million, not a lot.
And I guess when you think about it, what they do, they like, you know, who's in it, and you know what I mean? It's so it's
Tom Holland,
Tom Holland's
Zendaya.
third one, and you know, Zendaya's third one as well, so they get a whole money. They actually had a $121 million Friday opening in the US, which is the second highest Friday opening ever. Second only to Endgame. Yeah. No.
Of movie.
Yeah.
Not bad. It's very rare these days we get a proper big debut on the board or something that isn't like, well, it's actually the best, biggest release that it wasn't also released on streaming, and also blah blah blah.
It's estimated for weekend as well by $250 million in the US, maybe higher, and it's going to make it $500 million worldwide. This is like pre-pandemic numbers.
Back, baby.
I don't know if they are. I think
This
this.
movie's back, baby.
First I'll just explain. Fine. What do you think the story was?
Okay, Spider-Man. Last time I saw Spider-Man, he's like, oh no, I'm Spider-Man, I'm Peter Parker, whatever it is.
Goodbye.
Doctor Strange, do a magic so everybody doesn't know who I am.
Ah.
Thinks I did a murder if you're right.
Damn it.